Hi, everyone at USGS, and thank you for joining us for a live look at the restoration of mesophotic and deep benthic communities in the Gulf of Mexico. My name is Sasha Francis, and I'm the Gulf of Mexico Restoration Education and Outreach Manager for the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, one of the many partners helping to make this restoration work possible. I'm so excited to be your host today for a live interaction between USGS staff and scientists on land and the team on board the NOAA ship Nancy Foster in the Gulf of Mexico, conducting this restoration work in real time. So as some of you may know, we have not had the ability to connect with our expeditions like this in previous seasons. So it's very exciting this year to be able to communicate easily with our staff and crew on board, even when they're 100 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico. So we've worked with partners at University of Rhode Island's Inner Space Center, where I am right now in their mission control, to install Starlink systems on the ship that allow folks on board to have a strong enough internet connection to stream data, audio, and video to folks on shore for even better collaboration. This allows science team on board to work with team members on shore, share this fascinating restoration work with the public as well through broadcasts to classrooms or targeted educational events in this similar format to what we're doing today. So let's take a quick live look at the ship right now before we move on. If we can pull that up, that'd be awesome. We have some really exciting things going on today. We have the live feed of the back deck camera. We have a live feed of the ROV as it's going. So you can see a couple of those here. So check that out. We have the forward facing and the downward facing camera pulled up here. So it looks like we're cruising right now, and we do have some footage that we'll be able to share later of some of the push chorus that the USGS folks were doing earlier today. Awesome. All right, so now that we've had a sneak peek at the amazing ROV cameras that we have on right now, I'd like to turn things over to our two USGS scientists, Amanda Demopoulos, a research ecologist from the Wetland and Aquatic Research Center, and Cheryl Morrison, a research geneticist from the Eastern Ecological Science Center. Hi, Amanda and Cheryl. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, Sasha. So great to see you. Thanks so much for the kind introduction, and thanks for everyone for joining us today.
Great. And I will pop out so you guys can chat and take the spotlight here, but I will be in the background and help facilitate some questions as we go.
Oh, great. Thanks so much. It's incredible to be able to share this with you, Cheryl. Sorry I stepped on you.
Nope, no problem at all. Just saying thank you and then welcome everybody.
Well, I appreciate everyone joining today. It's an incredible treat and gift to be able to share the deep ocean with you in this way. The bottom of the ocean is expansive, as we know, and is the largest ecosystem on our planet. However, we've explored only more in the outer space than we have in the depths of our oceans. And though we have many questions remaining about those deep oceans environments. They have a reputation for being dark, cold, and void of life. But as we explore, we're learning a lot, and we're finding that the opposite is really true. Now, the habitats along the seafloor, we saw some really great images just a moment ago. They're incredibly diverse and complex, and as complex as what we see on land. There are trenches, volcanoes, seamounts, and hydrothermal vents, and even coral reefs are located so deep below the sea surface, there's no sunlight at all. And these colorful corals are the foundation of these ecosystems, providing habitat for the many important fish and invertebrate species. Now, USGS has studied these deep water habitats for decades, implementing interdisciplinary, multifaceted program that has grown to include scientists from 5 USGS science centers across the nation that represent 2 mission areas, ecosystems and hazards. Together, we contribute expertise in microbiology, paleoecology, genetics, benthic ecology, geology, marine minerals, and much, much more. We are even on the expedition with our academic and federal collaborators that discovered the deep sea corals injured by the oil spill and were part of the subsequent damage assessment. Because of this previous work on the assessment, along with funding from EMA and Hazards, our deep sea team was well poised to now contribute towards the goals of the mesophotic and deep benthic communities projects. And perhaps these are the projects that are the most ambitious that we've embarked on ever before. And through these partnerships we've developed with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and NOAA and many other academic and research institutions, we have developed innovative ways to explore these never before seen parts of our planet and have expanded what we know about deep water biological and geological resources. This work has provided critical information for ocean resource management and restoration needs, including characterizing deep sea ecosystems to inform alternative energy development, such as wind turbines, collecting baseline information about biological and geological resources within the USGS, and assessing the impact of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill on deep sea species and habitats.
So the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010 impacted marine ecosystems throughout the Gulf, including deep sea communities in mesophotic and deep benthic habitats. So the term mesophotic refers to the part of the ocean that receives just a little bit of sunlight that travels through the water to about 50 meters or 164 feet. And this area is commonly described as the twilight zone. And many species in the twilight zone are similar to those that we would see in shallow water reefs. But they're at the limits of their depth in the twilight zone. As you travel deeper past the twilight zone, the sunlight completely disappears, the water becomes colder, and the pressure increases until you reach the seafloor or the benthos. So because both the mesophotic and these deep benthic communities are deep, they're difficult to reach and to study. And so we rely on highly technical underwater equipment. You'll get a little glimpse of some of these today, such as the remotely operated vehicle that we're seeing footage from, or autonomous underwater vehicles, and even human carrying submersibles. And not surprisingly, restoration of these habitats is particularly challenging because of their depths and also because of how much remains to be learned about how these ecosystems function.
And we've been working with NOAA, BOEM, and others to conduct 4 projects which aim to better understand and restore mesophotic and deep benthic ecosystems. Each of the 4 projects has a different set of objectives. Through the mapping project here in the upper left, we are working on developing better high-resolution maps of the seafloor in the Gulf of Mexico to improve our ability to predict where sensitive coral habitats are found. The Active Management and Protection Project is working to reduce the threats that these ecosystems face and connect this restoration work to the public. The Coral Propagation Technique Project is testing different methods to help corals grow and reproduce in the wild and in labs, including one in my center's lab at Wetland and Aquatic Research Center in Gainesville, in order to help replace the corals damaged by the oil spill. Finally, the Habitat Project is focused on learning as much as we can about the species and communities that live in these habitats, their associated environmental controls, and how they may be connected across the Gulf of Mexico. And this will help fill critical gaps in our understanding of what makes these environments function, and that work will inform future monitoring and adaptive management of these remote yet very interesting and diverse habitats. As we've mentioned, it takes a village, a small village maybe, of diverse experts across many disciplines to execute these complex studies. The strong partnerships we've developed over the years make it possible. So I want to say, before we head to our folks at sea, both Cheryl and I want to give thanks to NOAA, the Inner Space Center, to Sasha and Caitlin for helping us provide our USGS staff a chance to join this Ship to Shore event. Thank you so much for all of your assistance.
Happy to help.
Now we're going to be moving on to the ship, I think. Is that right, Sasha?
Yes, we're going to connect with Alexis and Jenny on board here. I'm sure this is what everybody really wants to see. So what we'll do here is connect with them, and then Amanda, I'll let you introduce them and see the ship.
Thanks so much, Sasha. Well, the team aboard the Nancy Foster includes a few USGS scientists, including Alexis Weinig from the Eastern Ecological Science Center and Jenny McLean Counts from the Wetland and Aquatic Research Center. Hey, Alexis and Jenny, how are you doing?
Hey, Amanda. We are doing great. As you guys might be following along in another section of your Zoom, we're currently diving with the ROV. So Jenny and I have popped out into the wet lab to interact with you guys, and then we'll probably head back into the ROV van when we're done talking to you to see all the excitement.
Well, fantastic. Thanks so much. Is there anyone else in the lab with you right now, or anyone on board that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, we've got Zach from USGS.
Hi there.
Zach.
Zach is working on labeling the bottles. We took some sediment core samples earlier this morning, and so Zach's prepping all our containers for when those samples get back on board later this evening.
That's great, Jenny. Who else? What are the other partners that you guys have on board?
We have some scientists from Lehigh University, as well as the University of Rhode Island, and we've got Oceaneering is operating the ROV. I think that's everybody. And obviously our NOAA partners who are in charge of the ship, and NOAA Corps, which are the officers that actually man the bridge and do all the ship things.
Fantastic. Like I said, it takes quite a team to make it all happen, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We are just a small part of this whole operation. So we're here to collect specific types of animals and mud and animals that live in the mud. And then we have partners that are collecting water, collecting data from the seafloor. So we deployed a lander today with our partners from URI, which is a device that can stay on the seafloor for a whole year and record different types of environmental data so that we can know a bit more about the site that we're visiting.
That's fantastic. So sort of like a lunar lander, but on the deep sea floor, gathering lots and lots of essential information about these really exciting coral environments. So how have things been going? What have you been seeing? How's the weather? Anything exciting you want to share?
You want to go? Well, the weather's been fantastic, especially considering the time of year that we are in the Gulf, but we've had really calm seas and sunny days, which has made for some really great dives. We've been exploring. Right now we're off the coast of Florida. We're about 1,500 meters down in a new area that we found 2 days ago. So we've done a couple dives here, and you want to talk about some of the coral routines? Sure. So we've found a really great site that we hadn't dove on ever before. So nobody had seen it. We're in what's called DeSoto Canyon 1000, which is a small section of the Gulf of Mexico. And we've seen a high diversity of corals. So over between 15 and 20 different species. We have a couple that have come from previous dives. So collections of bamboo corals and even animals that might live or feed on the corals. And then we've also been able to collect samples for these ones in the large bags are what we call vouchers. So these will go to the Smithsonian to live on indefinitely in a natural history collection. And then we also have collected for the microbiome of corals, the genetics, the isotopes, many different kinds of analysis will happen from each collection. So we really try to maximize how much information we can get when we take these animals from the seafloor. We even have collected some corals to try and keep live in aquaria. So like Amanda talked about, the coral propagation project is working to be able to keep these corals live and develop propagation techniques. So we've collected some samples for that are live in a cooler. So I don't want to take them out to show you. But that way we can take those back to shore and see how well they survive in the tanks that the labs have set up.
That's great. Thank you so much, Alexis. I appreciate the tour of the samples. That's really an incredible collection suite so far. Can you tell us a little bit more about how those samples are going to fit into the bigger picture of the mesophotic and deep benthic communities portfolio?
Sure. So these are samples that will allow us to really understand these ecosystems. So with a lot of these types of animals that we collect, you don't know who it is until you have it in your hands. And so these samples will allow us not only to identify who they are, but get a real sense of what their depth distributions are, where their geographic distribution is across the Gulf. Like I said, this is a new site for us, so we didn't know necessarily that we would find all of these different species way over this west. And so it just gives us a broader picture, and these can filter into data that's been collected over the last decade, really, and continue to inform just what these habitats consist of and how vital they are for these ecosystems.
That's incredible. Thanks for the explanation. I think I'd love to see a little bit more of the wet lab if there's time, and then maybe you guys can take a little trek out to the back deck.
Yeah, we'll walk around. Jenny will kind of show you where she processes her mud samples, so the core samples, and then we'll head out to the back deck and do a little tour. Yeah, so as you see, space is kind of tight in the lab. We kind of have half that is for the fauna, and then this half we've been processing the sediment cores. And so we have some of our different tools out that we use to slice the core. So we'll take a whole tube core and section it into different size fractions, and then we'll look at the macrofauna, so animals greater than 300 microns, to get an idea of abundance and biodiversity. We also look at hydrocarbons, metals, grain size, porosity. So there's a lot of different analyses, and you can see of the different tubes. And you saw Zach labeling bottles. We've got a single sample is used in a lot of different ways. So we're really trying to maximize how much information we get with each dive. Yeah, so we will come around. So we've talked about sampling water. So we will collect water with what are called Vizcan bottles, so bottles that can trap water where you decide to on the ROV, as well as using a CTD, which we'll show you outside, and Cheryl can explain a bit more. But then we filter that water here for particulate organic matter, so we can determine, what nutrients and what are the sources of carbon coming down to these ecosystems to feed these animals. Yeah? Okay. So we're going to put our PFTs on real quick. So our safety equipment to head off to the back deck. We're going to mute ourselves because it's very loud outside. And we'll let Amanda and Cheryl kind of talk as we show you a couple things and show you inside the ROV van.
And real quick, I wanted to mention that we happened to have got a really great screen recording of one of the push cores from today, from just before this, that we really wanted to show off to everybody. So we'll pull that up on the screen while they're strolling out because it was so cool to see. And feel free to chime in, Amanda and Cheryl, and describe kind of what's going on here.
Sure. So what we can see in the field of view right now is the manipulator arm coming in and grabbing the T-handle of this coring device, and it's going to basically bring it back into its holding container, what we call a quiver, sort of like a quiver of arrows. It's a quiver for a push core. And this core then will go in and be processed, as Jenny explained. We're going to look at the animals that are living there and their environment and so on, and better understand the communities that are living here in the sediment environment surrounded by corals, how those corals are influencing the surrounding sediments. And basically, there's a lot of work that has yet to be done once those collections come back to the lab. So this is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the type of research we're doing. This is only the beginning step. A lot of work gets done at sea. But what I really want to show also is the inside view of the ROV van. It looks like we're getting a glimpse of the ROV operators there from Oceaneering, and then our science staff as well. And they're leading the dive currently. And you can see they're looking at a bunch of video screens. It's like, I guess if you were raised watching MTV or watching TV at home, this is the perfect avenue for you to use those skill sets and watch video games or whatever. This is an awesome opportunity to view the seafloor and then guide collections. Saying hey to Jason Tripp, the ROV lead, and then his team there are doing a fantastic job with collections and observations of the deep sea coral habitats. And you can see it takes a lot of different views to get the full perspective of this remotely operated vehicle view on the seafloor to make sure we get the full environmental context. I think Alexis and Jenny are going to also head outside in a bit to give us a chance to look what it's like out on deck. It looks like they're having a really beautiful day out there, which is fantastic. And they're going to go up. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry.
Oh, I just said that's some great weather out there.
Yeah, so they're going to head up to a place with a little better quieter spot for you all to be able to give us some chance to answer some questions that you may have. You can see they're walking up a few flights up to one of the places where people like to hang out when they have a little time to relax, which is not very often when you're super busy at sea. And we're very excited to hear any questions that you all may have. Once they get up there, you can see the amazing view. This is what they get to experience every day at sea in the Gulf of Mexico. This is an incredibly nice weather day, flat, calm. Sometimes it is like glass, super flat, and sometimes it's not so nice. But yeah, they've headed up to the bridge, and this is the deck where all of everything happens in terms of the operations for the ship and directing traffic up there. And then they're going to head out, give you the view around, and they're waving hi. So this looks like a good spot for them to help us with the question and answer feature. Sasha, I don't know if we have any questions initially.
Let me check here. Can y'all hear us out there?
Yeah.
Awesome. What a view. This is just to prove that they're not just in a studio somewhere, that there is actually water behind them. We're not faking it. Let's see here. We have you seen anything you did not expect to see or were surprised to find while you're out and about and watching the ROV footage?
Anything come to mind? I mean, just the fact that we knew nothing at this site. I mean, we're looking at bathymetry and just kind of based on models and past experience, making an educated guess on where we might find something. And we have had some dives that didn't pan out, where it was just all soft sediment, maybe a couple corals, and then we got to this spot and ended up finding a gold mine, just as Alexis said, a high diversity of corals and fauna.
Was there anything really cool that you've seen so far as organisms or anything else going on there? And I know last week during our broadcast to Lehigh University, we unfortunately saw a shoe, but perhaps anything living would be more exciting to mention.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, like we said, I mean, we're a lot of us are coral focused, so we get really excited about the corals, but we've also had some really interesting crustaceans. So we've had quite a number of giant isopods. So they're about this big. They look like a pill bug or like a roly-poly, and they swim when you approach them. So often, like, we come up to them with the ROV and they kind of take off. So those are always just fun to see. We can't sample them because they're too big and too fast. And then a lot of little squat lobsters or small crabs that live on the corals. There's been a high diversity of what we call associates, so animals that live on the corals and use them as a habitat in this area also.
It looks like they might have passed it, but there's some good footage on the ROV stream right now too, which people can see here pulled up. Let's see if we have any other questions here as well. It looks like I've seen quite a few arrow crabs today as well.
Yeah, and there's chirostylids, another kind of crab that's been living on the corals themselves. Sometimes you can see the arms like extended out, ready to capture some food. So there are loads and loads of them. I think we saw them on one of the larger paragorgias earlier, one of the octocorals. Really, really amazing views of the seafloor. This is such an incredible treat and gift to be able to see what you all are seeing basically live.
We did have another question come in. Do we know the approximate distance from the Macondo well at this location?
That's a good question. I'm not sure of the nautical mile distance we are from the wellhead. I know that we're about 100 nautical miles from the west coast of Florida, but I unfortunately don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, we have done quite a few expeditions directly to that, returning to that location. And this one is not quite as close as some of the other ones we've done. But someone else asked how far from land we're located today. You said about 100 miles, right, off of West Florida.
Yeah, so we came out of Mississippi, Pascagoula, Mississippi. We spent a little bit of time kind of off of Mississippi and Louisiana because that is closer to where Deepwater Horizon is. because we have impacted sites there, like what Amanda talked about earlier, where those corals were hit with the oil directly. And so we go back to those sites to monitor them. We have a colleague on board from MBARI, or the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, who images those corals and can assess how well they've recovered. And so one of the things we're doing with this dive specifically is looking for a site that has similar types of corals so that we can compare how well those corals are doing that we know were not impacted. And we have some reference sites from those initial assessments, but this one is actually closer than those other reference sites. So we're going to start to develop it while we're out here as a new point of reference.
Yeah, and I believe Cheryl had sent us a map that shows quite a few of the sampling locations from this expedition. So we might be able to show you all that too, a map of the Gulf of Mexico that shows some of those locations that we have for this particular expedition to give everyone kind of a visual of whereabouts you are. Wherever it is looks gorgeous. So we do that above the water and below. It's been really stunning to watch the underwater footage as well. So here we go. And I don't know if Cheryl wants to comment on this this map here.
It's actually Jenny's map. So maybe I should let her comment, or maybe Amanda, since it's from her lab.
Well, sure, Cheryl, it's fine. So you can see the star is the location of the Deepwater Horizon wellhead, and the stars, are the red squares, are the locations where the dives were planned for this mission. And the ones in close proximity to the white star, the red squares in close proximity to the white star, represent our locations that were most heavily impacted. They are the deep sea corals that we've been monitoring since 2010. And then some of the other locations are, some of the other dives that are represented include some exploratory dives that Alexis and Jenny mentioned as well, where they've been actually incredibly productive, and they've found deep sea coral habitats very similar in composition and diversity, if not more diverse than the areas that were impacted by the wellhead, serving as important reference sites, and will serve possibly as sentinel sites for monitoring in the future. And those monitoring sites are critical for us to better understand how these systems are recovering from the spill and their timescales for recovery.
And I guess I would just add that the red squares closer to Florida, that's the area that the Nancy Foster is now, where Alexis and Jenny are.
Looks like we don't have any additional questions in the chat at the moment, but I don't know if Amanda or Cheryl had any more questions for our crew on the ship at the moment.
Well, being a coral nerd, I was wanting to get an impression from Alexis. What are the types of corals that you've been seeing? And we see some sea fans, but there are probably multiple types, and maybe hard corals. Are you seeing any of those?
Yeah, so we've been able to, starting 2 days ago, we started diving at this site, and we've seen some madrepora and an elipsamia, which are two hard corals or hexacorals, and then we've seen a wide diversity of octocorals. So we've seen Paragorgia, Paramaricia, Chrysogorgia, Iridogorgia, Acanthogorgia, Trachethelia. We saw multiple different types of black corals, so Stigopathes, Parentopathes, Bathypathes. So
holy
moly, really diverse.
That's incredible.
Area.
That's amazing.
I can't wait to see all of the highlight clips from the ROV for this cruise. We had one more question here. How deep was your dive today?
So today we went to about 1,500 meters. So on our first dive at this site, we went a little bit deeper to 1,700. And we have worked our way up this kind of ridge or wall. And what we found was like a high diversity of corals when we get to the top of that wall, which is right at about 1,500 meters. So we just dropped right in today to that spot.
Very cool. It's pretty wild to be able to see in real time almost a mile underwater in the Gulf. Never seen that myself before. So it's very awesome. All right. Any other questions from Cheryl, Amanda? And also, if anybody does have questions and does want to unmute, we do have a smaller group. So do feel free to chime in now if you had anything else you wanted to ask.
Well, I have a sort of what makes this exciting question. You know, Jenny, you've been to sea a lot. You're not as old as I am, but you've been sailing almost as long. What makes you excited to go offshore? What are you most excited about?
I really enjoy the opportunity to see things that other people haven't. I mean, every dive is something new, and we don't really know what we're going to find. I also really enjoy. I always tell people going to sea is kind of like going to summer camp. So it's been great. I've sailed with Alexa before. I've sailed with Hannah before, and so kind of people I don't see very often. And maybe once a year we meet up on a boat. We do a lot of work. We have a lot of fun, and then it's like summer camp. So, nice.
Summer camp. That's a great way to describe it. Summer camp on the water.
So is the food better than summer camp?
What'd you say, Cheryl?
Oh, I was asking if the food is better than summer camp.
Yes. Yeah. Today, Bob made me falafel bowls. Or nice
Wow.
Dish. So he's been a fantastic cook and keeping us very well fed.
I hear great things about the food on the Nancy Foster. Oh, it looks like we have a little time lapse of you guys processing some sediment cores that everybody just saw there. So that was fun. Awesome. We do have one more question in the chat here. Have you taken any samples from the corals you were mentioning that you have observed? I know we've gotten some samples, but what kind of species did you sample so far?
Yeah, so one of the objectives of this project is to assess the diversity of the area. So we're trying to sample representatives of the different types of groups that we see. So if we see a certain type of coral a couple times, we normally take a sample of that. So we have sampled at least 15 to 20 species of corals over the last couple days, as well as the associates. So we try and get those smaller organisms that live on the corals as well. So a lot of the ones that I mentioned earlier, we also have samples of on board.
Fantastic. We're showing everybody a little picture of what it looks like when the manipulator arm takes a sample of one of the corals, this one being Swiftia, and then puts it in one of the receptacles on the ROV. So very cool. So it looks like we're good on questions now, unless Cheryl and Amanda had anything else to ask, or if Alexis and Jenny had anything in particular they wanted to share before we wrap up.
I think Cheryl might have, I wanted to mention, we have one more aspect that we're spending a lot of time in our lab at the EESC on, which is eDNA. So this is the process of collecting small fragments of DNA out of water. And so we do that by using the CTD, which we pointed to before, as well as Niskin bottles mounted on the ROV. And so it allows us to filter out the DNA from the water and hopefully create a way to monitor some of these systems without having to continuously collect the organisms from the deep. So it's a type of assessment that we're starting to develop within our aspect of our USGS work.
Yeah, and so you're seeing a picture of the ROV right now, and on the right-hand side, those gray bottles with the white caps, those are the Niskin bottles, and so they can be closed and capture the water where we would like those, so like close to coral areas. And then when we filter the water, when it gets back up on the deck and we bring it back to the lab, we sequence the DNA and compare it to references, and then we get like a catalog of what organisms are right there or nearby. And we can do this over time and create like a picture of what's in the water. Sometimes we might see corals in this DNA that we don't actually visually see with the ROV. So it's like another layer of information that's complementary to the other visual surveys and types of sampling that are happening.
Fantastic. And I think, I could be wrong, but Alexis, there was a CTD rosette on the back deck, right? And I apologize because I was showing them the really cool footage of the push core when you were out there. So I don't know if you'd mind maybe taking us, since we have a few more minutes, maybe taking us on a walk through the ship and then back out to see that CTD before we wrap up. And then we can reconvene in the wet lab and make sure anybody doesn't have any other questions before we wrap up. Does that sound good?
Sure. We will head through the bridge and down. So we'll mute ourselves again just to make that seamless, but we will do that and meet you guys in the wet lab.
Sounds great. So they're going to take us for a little stroll through the Nancy Foster, which is very cool to see. So here they're going to be walking in through the bridge to see all of all of that really great equipment that helps them run the ship. So this is a great view. They're going to turn around so you can actually see. All these windows are some of my favorite parts to see. Oh, I keep forgetting how big the ship is. I think I'm going to get it wrong if I guess, but we can ask after when they get back into the wet lab. So we have some of the NOAA Corps folks there on the bridge, and do feel free to jump in, Cheryl and Amanda. But I happened to be able to go out on the Nancy Foster just a couple weeks ago when they came into port in Galveston to avoid some storm surges. So great view of that space. And heading on down, I always love seeing kind of this visual tour of the ship. So I thought y'all might appreciate it. There is a gym in there as well and a small movie theater. Okay.
Yeah, they're passing through the basically the hallways past several staterooms, and they operate 24/7. So some people are sleeping while everyone's working. It's a very active ship, and they'll continue on down to the back deck if the stream isn't frozen. And it's incredible to be able to have this live resource. It doesn't take, you can't get down to the bottom very quickly unless you're in an emergency setting, but you don't want to hurt yourself. So
yeah, we did get.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, the Nancy Foster is 186 feet long. I was going to say 196, but I was like, I'm not.
That's pretty close.
I can't be certain, but thanks, Alex from our ISC team, double check that for me. So yeah. Perfect.
Oh, yep. There we go. Confirmation.
Amazing. That was my test. Oh, and we have some drone footage here of the Nancy Foster when it took off and set out into the Gulf, so we can see that here. Get a real good look at just how big that ship is. Okay, it looks like they are popping back out on deck to show us that CTD real quick before we go back into the wet lab, since I was disrupting that earlier. Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, so the CTD stands for conductivity, temperature, and density, or depth. And so there are sensors that will take readings of those environmental conditions as the CTD descends to the seafloor. And then those gray bottles are Niskins, bigger than the ones that were on the ROV, but they work very similarly. We can close them from the ship. And so we capture water at different depths, and then we bring it back up and filter it. And we use the water for 3 different things. We use it for a nutrient profile, for particular organic matter that is basically all of the food that's raining down, and then for the eDNA that we just talked about.
Awesome. Looks like I love watching them open the door. That's one of my favorite.
I know the doors are very they're heavy, and there's something to you need both hands, and
there is a gym on board, but also opening and closing those doors is part of your workout
exercise. Yeah.
Yes,
climbing all those stairs. Climbing all those stairs. Awesome. They should be able to hear us now, so we can wrap up with any other questions we have. That was a lovely stroll through. You can see their big screen here where they get to watch the ROV footage as well. Can y'all hear us again?
Yeah.
Perfect. We did have one more question here in the chat. Have you seen any oil deposits down there from the oil spill?
So no, not from the oil spill. So that oil cleared out within a year's time. So there's not oil left from Deepwater Horizon. But the Gulf of Mexico is a very oil-rich and hydrocarbon-rich place. So there are places that are just naturally seeping oil and other types of hydrocarbons. But we are not visiting them on this expedition.
Excellent. That looks like the only question we had left. Anybody else chime in before we wrap up? Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for Cheryl, Amanda, and Alexis and Jenny for joining us, and our lovely camera person as well. Thank you. We got some great compliments in the chat about, everybody was really excited to be able to see this in real time, and very cool to see y'all on board and see the footage of what is happening right now. Very awesome. And we did record this, so we'll be able to send it out to any of the USGS colleagues that were not able to make it. So thanks again. We got a fair winds and following seas to y'all. So thanks everyone for tuning in and asking such great questions. If you're interested in learning more, please check out the link that we have. I think we're going to pop it in the chat as well. But we have some QR codes now on the screen for our main homepage, landing homepage. And the story map of all of last season's expeditions, where you can see every single place that that our vessels went, our expeditions went for the MDBC work. And then we're hoping to do that again for the 2023 season. So you'll see more stats from this cruise on that when it comes out next year. So yeah, thanks for joining us today. And like they said in the comments, fair winds and following seas, everyone. So I'm going to leave this slide up for a few moments in case folks wanted to grab that QR code. And I'm sure you'll be seeing some stuff coming out from USGS as well about some of the sediment cruises too. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sasha, ISC, Alex, everyone. It's been awesome.
Good luck out there. Thanks everybody for your attention.
See ya.